F1 2014 is an example of a game that shouldn't have been released in the first place, and not just because Codemasters have stated that a new addition to the F1 monopoly will be released in only 6 months' time, but because it is quite literally the same old game that we have played time and time again, but with a different engine sound and cosmetic look. Hey there, my name's Gino, otherwise known as Crekkan because that's my channel name, and this video will answer a very simple question. Should you play F1 2014? In this video I'm going to analyse as much as possible while keeping to the premise of having a very simple answer, yes or no. So, stick around, I might be saving you or your mother 30 quid. Although of course most of you watching this have probably already bought this stopgap of a game, and if so I take pity on you. If you've managed to avoid the meme trains, rage parodies and dodgy reviews, then I give you credit, because you've somehow found me, and made me a slightly happier person in the process. F1 2014 is basically, again, the same old game that we have already experienced, but with less content, a different look and sound, and the same average feeling that we have been getting since 2012, and at this point it simply doesn't cut it. Many people expected F1 2014 to be a next-gen title, and quite frankly so did I, until we all found out that it wasn't going to be the case. But instead we found out that Codemasters will be making a next-gen title to be released sometime around the beginning of the 2015 Formula 1 season, supposedly around May. This already confirmed to the more skeptical that this was an intermittent game. And while the pre-release was a disaster, with the Codemasters page getting around about the same amount of hate that the Call of Duty Facebook page gets, and rendering errors on a trailer showing a clip of F1 2013 instead of 2014, you can already guess that a lot of people consider this game to be a clone of F1 2013. Some would dare say a clone of F1 2012. Am I saying F1 a lot? And considering how visually similar the game looked and seemed to be from the trailers, this wasn't a good start for Codemasters. Unfortunately, it doesn't get better. Seemingly, Codemasters' plan for F1 2014 was purely to make 2 more tracks, swap in an old track, produce poor engine sounds, change the cosmetic look of the cars and cut content. There is no denying it, F1 2014 has less content than F1 2013, which is a surprise to be honest. With classic mode cut and the gimmicky young drivers test tutorial thing that lasted 10 minutes removed, you would think that the allocated extra memory on the disc and the coding would add something from, let's say, a PlayStation 2 game, such as formation laps and interactive pit stops, but no. Instead, we had more cuts. No more customizable gear ratios, no ERS customization, an important part of this year's Formula 1. Not even a customizable career mode number, something that the MotoGP games have. Now, whether this is due to licensing restrictions, who knows? Codemasters are very quiet on this, except when it came down to the horrendous Williams livery issue, and the whole licensing argument can be used to counter several issues, but with very little validity, and we just don't know for sure whether it is laziness or insane FOM restrictions. Both are unfortunately possible. A lot of people like to throw around the term hit the limit, to try and defend Codemasters whenever they are criticised about a lack of features or content, but this only applies graphically now, due to all the content which has been cut, meaning there was more space on the disc and in the coding to add something new, or at least attempt to. The graphics must also be mentioned because we thought this would be a next-gen title, and a company called Milestone, I hope I'm getting this right, made MotoGP 2014 a next-gen title technically. Codemasters did themselves no favours on the "it looks like F1 2013" front, by having the exact same menu from F1 2012. The only difference being that instead of being in a garage or a wind tunnel, you're on the Bahrain circuit, probably the worst circuit you can be on, and there is no way to customize this. While an obvious attempt to make the game seem different, it just backfires because of this, and reminds people that this is just a stopgap game. Single player wise, you have the same old modes. Career mode, which is as sanitized and dull as ever, with a hub giving you some hope of FOM style graphics being used in game, which aren't. Something, once again, a PlayStation 2 game could do, which a newer console can't, supposedly. While you can shorten down your season to a minimum of 7 races now, which is a bit stupid, there are no more differences to be mentioned. Grand Prix mode is Grand Prix mode. Scenario mode is okay, with a good hour plus worth of gameplay if aced first time. Time attack only has 6 tracks, weirdly, and time trial is as pointless as ever, with no options to change the physics to a realistic setting, forcing you into Grand Prix mode where you have to dodge meh AI, which has been improved to be fair, if you want to practice for league races. Speaking of which, multiplayer is also pretty much the same. You have to contend with lag in quick mode races, as well as being crashed and glitched into by every driver on the field. While custom lobbies give people the hope of a clean race, the lack of a system that warns hosts of dirty drivers can even compromise those sessions, meaning you have to search out for racing leagues or create one yourself, if possible. Trust me, I've tried many times before. You can find plenty of leagues to join, such as Apex Online Racing, Precision Racing League and Total Racing League to join, and hopefully have fun and have a competitive and clean experience. Moving on to a more overall stance on the game, Codemasters have always had an issue with realism, and this extends from the feel of the cars to how quick teams can be in a single player career or Grand Prix mode. While you have to remember that this is more arcade than realism, unfortunately, and despite the popular demand for a more realistic feel to the game, you will be hard pressed to see a good amount of retirements in a race and to find Mercedes uber dominating as they have in real life. It seems like Codemasters did the same old trick of trying to have a top tier of cars with different winners instead of having something more realistic to the season, at least for one season in career mode. But again, this kind of thing applies to career mode players, which are, there are quite a few. I'm one. I feel so neglected. The cars are stupidly fast, and considering the rule changes this year, which are supposed to make the cars much slower, this is just dumb. On some tracks, people are not far off F1 2013 times, which is very unrealistic. In fact, the car's grip seems to be very similar to F1 2013, meaning only the speed has been tampered with. Seemingly a cheap move by Codemasters. Cars are still planted onto the track, with the controller users having a much easier time than steering wheel users, as Codemasters have made the pad completely overpowered. Expert AI is still too easy, using traction control when they simply should not. Corner cutting is still possible, you still have a god-awful suspension and alignment glitch, exploit, bug, whatever you want to call it, from 2010! 2010! The car sounds are also unrealistic, they just don't sound the same, they never really have, but it's just getting tiresome now. The radio engineer is the same still person, steering wheels are woefully inaccurate, you still have a piss poor damage model again, and we don't know if it's licensing or not, we just don't know. A remix soundtrack from F1 2012, same old cinematics which are slightly buggy, and still no FP1 or FP2 in Grand Prix mode or career, which for an official title of a series and brand is abysmal, especially when content is cut, freeing the space, despite demand, etc, etc. And am I repeating myself? In fact, it's Codemasters just repeating themselves over and over and over again. It's not even that I hate Codemasters. In fact, I love Codemasters. Honestly, I do. I've been supporting the company since the original Grid game, which I bought as a kid. And I don't really hate the game. I just think it's very damn average and boring. I have no reason to play it. And after 5 years, we don't talk about the Wii game. Of Codemasters producing F1 games, you would think that would start making really good games out of a license. Now, a lot of people will be saying, they are focusing their efforts on the next gen title. And sure, they are. But for that reason, they should not have released this game. Again, Again, we don't know if this is due to licensing, since they don't bloody tell us. But they should. If they did, then there you go, they have an excuse for something. They should have released the F1 2014 season alongside the next gen title representing, presumably, the 2015 Formula 1 season. Until they clarify for themselves on whether this was possible or not, all this game is a shambolic, weak, average game with less content than the previous, and simply the same old game as the last two F1 games at the very least. See, this works me up. It works me up, because this game could be great. Codemasters could be doing a fantastic job with this license, or the license could be with someone else. But they seem to hold a monopoly, or no one cares about F1 anymore. And it's a shame, because at this rate, all we're going to get is average F1 games, and maybe next year it might be a good game. Maybe the next gen title will be a good game. But I have little faith in that at the minute, very little faith. And of course, while mods can fix and change some things around, such as the Martini livery on the best team, Williams, the console gamers cannot get the support. And even the PC gamers might find themselves with less to download, as the amount of people buying this game is much less than with F1 2013. Seriously, I try and go into multiplayer and there's nothing, there's barely anything to join. So, unless you're some sort of F1 game collector, or haven't bought F1 2013 or 2012, should you play F1 2014? No, you should not.